The dean of Calderwood School of Medicine looked at my torn sleeve for 11 seconds before he said anything. It wasn't pinned. It wasn't safety pinned closed. It hung off my shoulder by 3 threads, ripped straight through the seam, and the whole left side of my blazer sagged like something that had given up overnight. He looked at the tear. He looked down at the folder open on his desk. He looked back up at me. Then he said 4 words that, although neither of us knew it yet, had already ended my sister's medical career before she'd finished her first year of school. "Wait, you're her?" "My name is Natalie Hartwell. I'm 27 years old." 18 hours before that moment, my younger sister tore that sleeve off my body with her bare hands, in front of our mother, who told me I was being dramatic for flinching. What none of them understood yet, what I didn't fully understand myself until I was sitting in that office, is that the blazer wasn't the only thing in our family that had been torn apart. They were just the last ones to notice. If you've ever been the daughter your family quietly decided not to bet on, stay with me. Like this video if it's already hitting somewhere. Subscribe if you want to hear how it ends. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let me take you back to where this actually started. I grew up in Lake Forest, Illinois, in a stone house with a circular driveway that my mother kept photo-ready for the Garden Club newsletter. My father, Graham Hartwell, ran the Chicago office of a private equity firm. My mother, Vivian, sat on the board of a hospital foundation and chaired the spring gala for the Lyric Opera Guild. We looked, from the outside, like the family the local paper put on the cover of its spring home tour issue. I was the first daughter. My sister Sloane came 4 years later, and from the day she was born, my mother talked about her like she was a different species of child. Sloane had the right laugh. Sloane had a face that made strangers want to keep looking at her. I had, in my mother's words, a very serious little face. I remember a violin recital when I was 12. I'd practiced for months and played without a single mistake. My mother kissed my forehead afterward and said, "That was very accomplished, Natalie." Then she turned to the room and said Sloane, who was 8 and hadn't touched an instrument in a year, had such a natural stage presence, and gave her the encore slot instead. I sat in the audience and watched my little sister take a bow for a song she'd never learned. That was the shape of our house. Not cruelty you could point to, just a constant, quiet arithmetic that never came out in my favor. When I was 16, I said at dinner that I wanted to be a doctor. My father set down his fork like I'd announced something embarrassing. A week later, at a fundraiser, I heard my mother tell a friend that Sloane wanted to be a pediatrician. Sloane was 13, and wasn't that just wonderful? She'd always had such a gift with children. My father came to my room a few nights after that. He sat on the edge of my bed and told me, gently, that medicine was a long road, and that Sloane had the temperament for it, and that I was better suited to something steadier. He really believed he was being kind. I applied to college on my own, wrote my own essays, and didn't show anyone until I had the acceptance letter in hand. My mother looked at it and said it was a fine school, not one we brag about. My father told me not to expect tuition help for medical school later. "We're saving that for your sister." So I worked. 2 jobs through undergrad, loans the rest of the way. I didn't go home for a single long weekend in 4 years. I graduated with honors in biology and moved to Chicago 3 weeks later to start work as a family liaison on the cardiac unit at St. Anselm's Children's Hospital. My job was simple to describe and hard to do. I sat with families through the parts of pediatric cardiology that no one explains well the first time. Surgical consent forms, transplant wait lists, what a number on a monitor actually means at 2 in the morning. I made $54,000 a year. When I told my mother, she asked if it was more of a volunteer thing. I'd been there 10 weeks when I was paged to a room on the 4th floor. That's where I met Noah Reyes. Noah was 7. He'd been born with half a working heart and had already had 2 surgeries by the time I walked in. His mother, Carmen, had come from Guatemala 14 years earlier and worked as a seamstress at a dry cleaner near the hospital. His father had died in a warehouse accident when Noah was 2. Carmen's English was good for ordinary conversation, but the cardiology fellow had just left after explaining what a transplant evaluation actually involved, and the words had outrun her. I sat on the edge of Noah's bed and switched to Spanish. I told Carmen what evaluation meant in plain terms. I told Noah that no, this didn't mean he was dying tomorrow. It meant the doctors were trying to find him a stronger heart, and that finding one took patience, and patience was something he already had plenty of, because here he was, still finding jokes to tell me at 7 o'clock at night with a tube in his arm. He reached out and took my hand before I left that night. He didn't say anything, he just held it. I came back the next day, then most days for almost 2 years. I read him the same dog-eared book about a spider and a pig, probably 40 times. He liked timing his breathing to the hallway clock on bad nights, counting the seconds between the ticks, like it gave him something to hold on to besides the monitor. His room faced the parking garage instead of a sunrise, and he used to joke that someone in scheduling clearly hated him. In the spring of his 2nd year on the list, a donor heart that seemed promising fell through at the last possible hour. He never got another match close enough. By that fall, the cardiology team moved him to comfort care. His attending, Dr. Ades Okafor, was the one who told Carmen there were no more options left to try. 2 weeks before he died, Noah asked his mother to write something down exactly the way he said it. Carmen wrote it in pencil, in her own handwriting, and didn't change a word. It was addressed, in his own phrasing, to whoever decides who gets to be a doctor. It said that I had explained things to him in words he could actually use, that I'd stayed past the end of my shift more nights than anyone asked me to, that I was already a doctor in every way that mattered except the diploma, and that whoever was deciding should pick me. Carmen gave that letter to Dr. Okafor on a Tuesday. Dr. Okafor had trained years earlier with a man who was now Dean of Admissions at Calderwood School of Medicine. She forwarded the letter to him with one line, "Keep this. You'll know when she applies." He put it in his desk drawer. Noah died 9 days later. I went to his funeral. So did Dr. Okafor. My parents did not. My sister did not. While I was working 60-hour weeks at St. Anselm's, Sloane was 3 years into her own run at a small college 20 minutes from our house. With a private MCAT tutor my mother paid $12,000 for, an admissions consultant on retainer, and shadowing experience my mother described at every dinner party as practically a residency already. I pulled the visitor log once, much later. In 3 years, Sloane had been on a hospital floor exactly 3 times, for a combined total of under 2 hours. She never once met Noah. I hadn't planned to apply that cycle. I'd told my supervisor I wanted to stay with Noah through hospice, and she told me that was a hard choice and also a doctor's choice. But I drafted a personal statement anyway that spring, on a Tuesday afternoon, and saved it to the family cloud drive, because that's where I'd saved every important document since I was 15. I wrote about Noah by name. I wrote about the hallway clock. I closed the laptop and didn't think about it again. I didn't know my mother opened that file 11 nights later, at 2 a.m. I didn't know that 3 weeks after that, Sloane submitted her own application to Calderwood, with my hallway clock sentence sitting inside her essay, word for word. Sloane got in. She started that August. By the time my own interview invitation arrived 18 months later, she'd already finished her first year. My mother called the week before my interview and insisted I come home Saturday night for a family dinner, before your big day. I hadn't been back in almost a year. I said yes, because some part of me still believed a dinner like that meant something. Dinner was its usual kind of cold. My mother asked Sloane about her exam scores. When I mentioned my interview, she said, "We'll see how it goes. Calderwood isn't for everyone." Sloane put her fork down and looked at me for the first time all night. "You know I'm there now," she said. You know what that means. After dessert, I went up to steam my blazer for the morning. I'd laid it on the ironing board in the laundry room off the kitchen when I turned to fill the spray bottle. When I turned back around, Sloane was standing in the doorway. She picked up the blazer by the shoulder and pulled, once, hard, with both hands, until the seam gave and the whole sleeve tore loose at the stitching. She looked at me and didn't say a single word. My mother, from the couch, didn't even lift her eyes from her phone. Stop being dramatic, Natalie. It's a sleeve. My father added that Sloane was going through enough and I shouldn't make this about me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I turned off the iron, folded the blazer over my arm, and went upstairs. I slept 4 hours, put the torn blazer on at 5 a.m., and drove 200 miles to Calderwood in silence. There were 8 applicants interviewing that day, 3 rounds each. My second interview was with the Dean of Admissions himself, Dr. Marcus Whitcomb. A slot, the admissions assistant mentioned, almost in passing, that he'd requested specifically. He shook my hand, looked at the torn sleeve for those 11 seconds, and asked me to tell him about a patient who'd changed how I thought about medicine. I told him about Noah, all of it, his name, the hallway clock, the parking garage view, the joke about scheduling. I talked for 6 minutes. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he didn't ask another question. He opened his desk drawer, took out a thin folder, and set a single folded page on the desk between us without turning it toward me yet. Noah Reyes, he said. Congenital heart defect. Mother named Carmen. A hallway clock. You're the one in that letter? He turned the page around. I recognized Carmen's handwriting before I read a single word. The same careful, slightly slanted English she used in every form she'd ever signed at the hospital. He read it aloud, slowly. It said what Noah had wanted said, that I'd explained things to him in words he could use, that I'd stayed, that I was already a doctor in the ways that mattered. He set it down. This has been in that drawer for 14 months, he said. I didn't know if Noah had lived long enough to see you apply. I learned that part just now, watching your face. Then he folded his hands. There's a second piece of evidence in your file I can't legally show you in this room. It was submitted by a third party. I'll only say this. Someone else in your family used language from this same patient's story in an application essay to this school last year. I've been waiting to find out which version of events was true. He stood. You have one more interview today. Take it as scheduled. After that, I'll be in touch. There's a formal process, and I want to walk you through it properly. I drove home slower than I'd driven up. I called my old supervisor, Dolores, from the road. Did you know Sloane claimed to have shadowed on our floor? I asked. There was a pause. She was on our floor 3 times in 3 years, Dolores said. I keep the logs. Why are you asking me this now? I called my mother next. I didn't say Noah's name. I just asked if Sloane had written about a patient named Noah in her essay. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Too long for someone who supposedly didn't know what I was talking about. You're exhausted, my mother said. Come home. We'll talk. That night, Dean Whitcomb emailed to schedule a formal review with the school's Academic Integrity Committee and asked if I could provide my original draft. I pulled up the cloud drive and clicked into the document's version history. It had 20-some edits, all mine, except one. A single access entry 11 nights after I'd written it. No edits, just a view. My mother's account. A week later, my father called for the first time in over a year. We met at a diner near my apartment. He set his phone on the table, opened a text thread between him and my mother, and turned it around without looking at me. I scrolled up to the date that mattered. My mother, at 2:14 a.m., just read Natalie's draft. The Noah paragraph is the best writing in this family. Should I send it to Sloane? My father, hours later. Vivian, that's Natalie's work. My mother again. Natalie isn't applying this cycle. Sloane applies in June. This is just material. Natalie can write something else next year. There were 60 more messages after that, spread across 10 months, coordinating which lines to use and when. My father slid the phone toward me. "I should have said no," he said. "I didn't. That's the same as saying yes." I went home that Sunday, not for her, for my father. My mother met me at the door with her arms folded. "We can still fix this," she said. "Drop the complaint. Sloane doesn't deserve to lose everything over a sentence." I walked past her, up to her bedroom, and opened the second drawer of her dresser, the one she'd told me when I was 10 was private, that I was never to open. Underneath a stack of folded scarves was a small folded piece of paper. Carmen had told me weeks earlier on the phone that she'd handed my mother a drawing from Noah at a hospital donor lunch 18 months ago, a drawing meant for me, and that my mother had promised to deliver it. I unfolded it, a crayon drawing of a hand holding another hand, on the back in careful pencil printing, "For when you're a doctor too, Noah." I carried it downstairs and set it on the dining table in front of everyone. "This was given to you," I said to my mother. 18 months ago. It was mine. You kept it in your drawer, under your scarves." Sloane started to say something. I cut her off, not loudly. "I have your essay. I have my draft. I have the access log. I have Dad's texts. I have this. I'm not asking you to understand. I'm telling you what happens Wednesday." I picked the drawing back up before my mother could reach for it, and I left. The hearing was held in a small conference room at Calderwood 11 days later. Dean Whitcomb chaired it, with one other committee member, Dr. Iris Boone. Sloane sat across from me with no one beside her. The school didn't allow outside counsel in these reviews. My old supervisor, Dolores, sat in as a professional reference for me. I went through it in order. The visitor logs, 3 visits, under 2 hours, none in Noah's room. My draft, dated and time-stamped, against Sloane's submitted essay. The hallway clock sentence, identical word for word. The access log showing my mother's name. Carmen joined by video and confirmed, in her own words, that Noah had never once met Sloane, that he'd known exactly who I was and exactly who I wasn't. Dr. Boone asked Sloane directly whether her mother had given her the drawing or told her about it. Sloane, crying now, not performing anymore, said she'd never seen it, never known it existed. Whitcomb set the drawing on the table next to the letter and let the room sit in silence for a long moment. Then he turned to Sloane. "You were 21 when you submitted this essay. You're 23 now and a year into medical school. At no point did you contact this committee, the family, or the care team to correct the record. When it was my turn to close, I didn't ask for anything. I said that I wasn't there to destroy my sister or embarrass my parents. I was there because an 8-year-old boy had asked, in his own words, to be heard, and I owed him that much. He had a mother who loved him, and a hallway clock, and 2 years of treatment," I said. "He didn't have my sister. He had me. I'm still here. That's what this is about." A week later, Calderwood offered me a seat in the incoming class, citing, in the dean's own words, a personal statement and interview that reflected uncommon clinical integrity. 4 days after that, the Integrity Committee dismissed Sloane from the program entirely, citing authorship fraud and an 8-month failure to correct the record once enrolled. My father called that afternoon. He told me he'd already signed a lease of his own and was separating from my mother, not asking for forgiveness, just for time to do the rest of it properly. My mother sent exactly one text. "You destroyed your sister. I hope this was worth it." I didn't reply. I didn't block her either. I just stopped holding any of it up. In May, I drove to see Carmen. She'd moved to a smaller apartment after Noah died because the old one had too many ghosts in the hallway. She'd framed his drawing herself with a $4 frame from a thrift store and hung it over her kitchen table. After we ate, she brought out a sewing kit and asked for my blazer. She turned it inside out, fit the torn sleeve back into the shoulder seam by hand, and stitched it closed so carefully you'd never know it had been torn at all. Unless you looked at the inside of the lining, where she'd added one small embroidered detail near where my heart would sit. A tiny stitched outline of a clock. "Now he's inside, where no one can tear him out again," she said. "I start at Calderwood in 3 months. The blazer hangs by my front door, mended on the outside, marked on the inside. My mother once told me it was just a sleeve. She was wrong about that, the same way she was wrong about almost everything else. The story my family built was, in the end, just a story. The one a sick 8-year-old dictated to his mother in pencil, that was the one that turned out to be true."